Do P&E open the roll call, please? And Skylar's in the bathroom. And
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
I hit it, but can you put me on?
thank you. We have a quorum, so we're going to, first of all, we'll get some procedural things out the way. All of the gubernatorial appointments will be passed by for the week. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? So aye?
Aye.
All opposed? Great. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 bills will be passed by for the week. That, and I'm going to read those out so we can do them in a block. That'll be SB 147, SB 315, SB 428, and SB 606. Those will be by for the week. Is there a motion?
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Those are by for the week. Then I want to read our online procedures. Those of you who are online who have an opportunity to speak to the bill you wish to speak to, you will have 1 minute to get your remarks across. And that's how we would do the online. We don't have a subcommittee, so there will be no online testimony and sub here. With that being said, first we will take, is Senator McPike here? I don't see Senator McPike here, so we will go with Senator Boysko. You will be first today. He's in Congress. He'll be here.
I have SB 377, and I have an amendment.
Do we have that amendment? All right. Move the amendment.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? You may continue. Amendment is so moved.
Thank you. Would you like to read the amendment?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Is it online?
Would you like me to read that on?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
No.
So the amendment is on line 647 of the introduced bill after 4, strike child, insert dependent. And then the second amendment is on line 646 of the introduced bill after the, strike persons, and insert persons with an apostrophe. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions? Patron?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Rouse and colleagues, today I have SB 377. It is a much-needed and important bill that would restrict and clarify what we can use our campaign funds on that are donated to a political candidate running for office in the Commonwealth. Nearly every other state in the United States, as well as the federal government, already bans the use of campaign funds for personal use. According to the Pew Research Center polling, trust in elected officials is at an all-time low. We, the body, needs to assure our constituents that elected officials who are running for office to serve them, not to enrich themselves. I ask you to think of the most recent abuse of campaign funds, and I think everybody knows who I'm talking about, former Congressman George Santos, a Republican who was elected in 2022 to represent the district on Long Island. He was expelled from Congress because there was a report by the House investigators who found substantial evidence that he had committed federal crimes. The report detailed how Mr. Santos had diverted tens of thousands of dollars of campaign money towards his own personal expenses, including luxury goods, Atlantic City casinos, rent payments, and a website primarily known for explicit sexual content. He spent money on spa days, on his own vacation, on items from luxury retailers, and rent. But here is the horrifying thing. Pretty much everything that he did at the federal level would have been legal if he had been in our body here. It would have been fine. While our donors expect us to use our funds to win our own elections, or help others win their elections, or pay for reasonable costs that have an immediate connection to our service as elected officers. Any one of us could take the room out for dinner just for fun, or take our families on a Caribbean cruise, or treat everyone here for a spa day. I think it's time to change the laws here in Virginia, and my bill puts reasonable spending limits on how a candidate or an elected official can use the funds entrusted to us by our donors. So here's what it would do. A contribution accepted by a candidate or his campaign committee may be used for the following purposes: for otherwise authorized expenditures in connections with a candidate's campaign, for ordinary and necessary expenses incurred in connection with the duties of the individual as an office holder, for contributions to any organization described in Section 170C of the Internal Revenue Code, for transfers, and I believe that's nonprofits, for transfers to any federal, state, or local political party committee, for contributions to the federal, state, and local candidates subject to provisions of the prevailing law, for dependent care, like a babysitter if you are the primary caregiver or caring for an older adult that you are the primary person, that are incurred as a direct result of the persons seeking, holding, or maintaining public office, and for any other lawful purpose unless prohibited by subsection B. And so subsection B is what limits us. You cannot use your money for personal use. For the purposes of this subsection, a contribution shall be considered to be converted for personal use if the contribution is used to fulfill any commitment, obligation, or expense of a person that would exist irrespective of the person seeking office, holding, or maintaining public office. This includes your home mortgage, your rent, or utility payment where you've been living, a clothing purchase, a non-campaign related automobile expense, a country club membership, a vacation or other non-campaign related trip, a household food item like your regular grocery bill, but not pizza for your staff, a tuition payment, admission to sporting events, concerts, theater, or any other form of entertainment not associated with an election campaign, or dues, fees, other payments to a health club or recreational facility. These are common sense changes that we need to clarify so that we can assure our donors and our constituents that funds are going to be used responsibly and appropriately. We have the responsibility to our communities, and the public has been asking for this change in policy for years and years. We got this through the Senate last year. It died in the House, and I ask that you report the bill to the Senate floor.
Thank you, Senator Boysko. Do you have anyone to speak in support of the bill? And please, you will have 1 minute for your remarks, or you can simply state whether you support or oppose the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nancy Morgan from Big Money Out. I'd like to testify in support of the George Santos bill. This is the 10th year that this bill has been introduced, and we keep coming back every year, and we really don't want to keep coming back on something that is really a common sense bill that builds citizens' confidence in their government and their institutions. Obviously, we continue to be amazed that this doesn't get through. And just to remind everybody, Adam Ebbin is my senator. I love him, but I really don't want to have him get millions of dollars from out-of-state donors and go spend them in the Caribbean. I don't think he wants to either. So I really hope you pass this. It protects legislators from frivolous complaints. It's not a gotcha bill. There's a really rigorous process, and through reviewing these constraints, it's supported by 73% of Virginians in some surveys that we did by the Wasson Center. So please pass the bill so we don't have to come back next year. It passed this 15-0. Please pass it. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris DeRosa. I'm here representing the League of Women Voters of Virginia. And the League of Women Voters supports SB 377 as amended. Currently, Virginia has no legal restrictions on how candidates can use their campaign funds, except for surplus funds at the end of a campaign or term of office. As such, Virginia has rightfully earned its rank of 46 out of 51 on the nonpartisan Coalition for Integrity's SWAMP Index. We are pleased that the amendment will now allow campaign funds to be used for dependent care, not just for child care. This bill is a welcome step toward strengthening Virginia's campaign finance laws. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman and committee members. My name is Karen Greenaway. I'm from rural Virginia. I'm a retired federal law enforcement officer. This is the second year I'm speaking in person for this bill, and this is the fourth year I've been for some versions of this committee to support this bill. I currently represent, as a volunteer, Big Money Out, and I would ask you to consider that when I discuss this bill, particularly with rural voters, the response is, oh, they're just going to use the funds for their own benefit, their campaign funds. And that is trust. That is trust in all of you that is eroded because there is not some sort of official legal prohibition against that usage. So I would ask you to consider, once again, this bill. As Nancy said, we don't want to come back another year to have this discussion, but this is long overdue. We're only one of 2 states in the United States that does not have this prohibition. I would ask you to vote yay for this bill. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jessica Mott from Arlington, Virginia. I'm a member of the executive committee of the grassroots group We of Action, WOFA. I support this bill. As a campaign contributor, it is important for me to have the confidence that my donations are being used for their intended purpose, the campaign expenses. This trust enables my knowing that the candidates are restricted from using these trusts for their personal use. The bill establishes well-defined and consistent standards of what does and does not entail personal use so that all candidates are subject to the same yardstick. Includes measures to ensure that candidates understand the requirements and provisions to prevent and penalize frivolous complaints. So I ask you to support this bill.
Good day. My name is Dan Holmes. I'm with Clean Virginia, Legislative Director, and we support this bill. I believe the speaker prior to the last was talking about when she tells friends about this bill, this legislation. When I tell my family and my friends about this bill, they can't believe this is still legal in any state in the United States. So I hope that you will follow suit with what happened last year with the unanimous passage of this bill. And I believe when it hit the floor, it actually received 37-0 vote in the Senate. So thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Melson, and I'm from Rappahannock County, Virginia. I'm a former independent candidate for the state Senate, and much of what I spoke about when I was campaigning was campaign finance reform, and I found that that really resonated with the people of Senate District 28 that I spoke to, people that wanting to support an independent candidate or people that are just totally checked out of the process and feel like their vote or their voice doesn't matter. Because they expressed that there's something wrong with politics and it has to do with money. And maybe they couldn't exactly put their finger on it or articulate what it was, but they knew that the way we fund our campaigns and our electeds wasn't serving them. So, this is just scratching the surface of what we can do for campaign finance reform, and I think it's something that we should do here today. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone to speak in opposition? Do we have anyone online to speak to this bill? Thank you. Is there any comments or from the committee? Senator Sturtevant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for bringing this bill, Senator Boysko. I think it's a good bill, smart policy. Something that should have been done a long time ago, of course. It's a lengthy bill, and I've read it, but as I understand it, I heard someone say that they don't want to prevent Senator Eben from accepting money from outside of state, which was meant in jest. And this bill doesn't have anything to do with campaign contributions. It only has to do with us and how we use campaign contributions, which should be not for personal use, but for campaign use, correct?
Mr. Chair, Senator Sturtevant, you're correct. This does not apply at all to where the contributions are coming from, only that it puts limits on how we can spend it as candidates.
And follow-up question, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Sturtevant.
And the only other, you may tell me to get my own bill, and that's fine, but the only other area where I think we should be covering campaign contributions in line with what you're doing here is what I have seen is candidates are able to go run for federal office, raise money for that campaign, and then bring it back to a state campaign account. And I've seen that in races that I've been in. And in keeping with the policy that we should be spending the funds for the intents for which they were contributed to our campaigns, which is to campaign for office, state office, if you would consider it a friendly amendment, that is an amendment that I would propose to help, I think, improve this legislation where money that is raised in a federal campaign for a federal office can't then be used in a state campaign for a state office.
Yeah.
Senator Floyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So while I appreciate the senator's concern about the federal and state fundraising, I don't necessarily think that's germane to this one. It sounds like a separate bill and a bill that I may actually support. So if you want to bring that, sir, I would definitely want to have conversations about that. For this patron, I want to thank you for bringing this. It's absolutely untenable that we have very lax, almost no laws here in Virginia about how campaign finance occurs, how we spend it, what we spend it on. And the Nonpartisan Coalition for Integrity ranked Virginia 46 out of 51 in their swamp index. And it's mainly because we don't have guardrails, because we don't have guidance on how we're supposed to spend the money that we raise, that the voters and our constituents entrust in us to just get elected. But I also want to acknowledge the permissive use of contributions for dependent care. As we know, we have the large number of women who have run and won office. Most of the child care and dependent care, caring for our parents, falls on our shoulders. And it has actually become prohibitive for many of us to run for office because of that. So I greatly appreciate you having that permissive use. I think it's needed and necessary in society for us to have a welcome and open place for more women to run for office, and this will help get us there. So I just want to thank the patron of the bill, and I hope we can all support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Diggs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for the patron.
You may proceed.
Just a point of clarification, actually. On line 655, it's a clothing purchase. While I think the intent is for personal use of clothing purchase, I want to make sure that we are not incidentally excluding, campaign T-shirts, hats, polo shirts with logos embroidered on them. I want to make sure that that isn't accidentally being excluded.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Diggs, thank you for asking for that clarification. Yes, if you go up to line 648, it says, contributions to a candidate or his campaign committee shall not be converted by any person for personal use. For the purpose of this subsection, a contribution shall be considered to be converted for personal use if the contribution is used to fulfill a commitment, obligation, or expense of a person that would exist irrespective of the person seeking, holding, or maintaining office. So I would say that I would have no reason to buy campaign T-shirts or hats or banners if I were not running for office, but that would be a permissible use if I were to purchase T-shirts and hats for my campaign. That I think it's very clear. I think that language is very clear, and I appreciate the question.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And that was my understanding, but I wanted it to be crystal clear in my mind, and you have certainly validated that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Diggs.
All right, is there a motion to report? I'm sorry. Yes, we have two more. Excuse me for that. Senator Durant, then Senator Rome, you'll be next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question for the patron?
You may continue.
Thank you, Senator. I think along the same lines, a clarification on, I think, what could potentially be construed as some gray area. We see I don't have the PDF on it, but I've got the highlighted version here, but household food items. So how that would be distinguished between, thank you so much, Senator, on purchases saved for an office, for hospitality or staff, that sort of thing. You referred to the pizza. How would we distinguish between ensuring that this is truly in the spirit in your legislative intent, which is we're not using it for personal use, but could be construed, and how this would come about to make sure that it's being clear in the intent?
Mr. Chair, Senator Durant, I would just go back and say if you are buying these things, so your weekly groceries, your oatmeal and your milk and your eggs and your sack of flour and your shampoo, if you are buying those on a regular basis and you always buy those, that is not considered a campaign expense. That would not be allowed under this bill. However, if you are buying snacks for your campaign, I don't eat little gummy candies, but my team loved those. So we made sure that our staff had access to snacks and tea and chips every day and water. And they were at the campaign office. I did not take them home to put them in my cupboard. Those were for the volunteers and the staff members. But I did not take my campaign credit card, Mr. Chair, and go shopping and get my Beyond Meat and my buns to make my vegetarian burgers or, spindrift drinks that I drink at home. That is a difference, right? If you're already buying your groceries, that's not allowed. If you're buying pizza or lunch or treats for your team, that's a different thing, and that would be allowed.
Senator Durant? Yep.
Follow-up question on it. I am certainly following the intent and but I'm concerned about that becoming into a gray area in terms of, I'm not sure what if that process was initiated, that there was some impropriety in how the funds were being used. If there's an itemization of going through and scrutinizing the gummies were in fact for these kids versus, I made some purchases for hamburgers and they really truly were not for my family, but because we grilled. I just want to see how we're going to really be able to distinguish if it's in fact, not personal, but we would have to go through that justification process.
Mr. Chair, Senator Durant, I would just point out that we are looking to stop egregious personal spending. Let's just go back to what former Congressman Santos spent his money at: a honeymoon in Vegas, Airbnbs for hotel stays that had nothing to do with any of his work except that he was off for a vacation on the weekend, spa days, transferring his money from his campaign account, to his personal bank account, buying Hermes scarves, going to Sephora, Ferragamo, right? Those are egregious, and that is what this bill intends to stop. I think that common sense, and there will, the Board of Elections, there will be a board which things could come through if there were questions, and I would think any rational human being would know the difference between blatant abuse and something that, if you buy some hamburgers for your staff, I think that's certainly within the realm of reasonable expenditures.
I think
Senator Durant?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we might maybe want to consider, I don't know if the patron would consider, maybe that friendly amendment to consider striking that area just because it could get into problematic, but I respect very much where you're coming from with this one, just not to get into that discussion of whether or not, I promise this was used in the office. We purchased we did a barbecue style event versus into it, and I'm not quite sure how to clarify on that one, but that's just kind of one of my areas I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the bill, just for that reason. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Durant, I appreciate your concern. I think that the bill is in good form. We've worked on this for many years. It has passed unanimously through the House, through the Senate, repeatedly, and I would like to keep it in the posture that it is. But I appreciate your concern.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Patron.
Thank you, Senator Ryan. I'm glad I could catch you finish your remarks. Senator Roan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, question for the patron.
Let me continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would just ask the senator if she could just clarify on line number, from line 640 to 641, where it says under the permitted uses for ordinary and necessary expenses incurred in connection with the duties of the individual as an office holder. I just wanted to clarify for the public record that basically in the General Assembly, we very often will have a second staffer. One staffer tends to be covered by our, but basically by the state, basically our legislative assistant, aka chief of staff. And then the workload that we get, we already know that's insufficient. And so a lot of us bring on someone else, and we very often will use the campaign fund in order to, properly staff that, right? And I just want to clarify, just for public record on this, that line 640 to 641 would in fact permit that use so that we could continue basically making sure that we have as robust constituent service as possible when we're actually here in Richmond.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rome, excuse me, you're absolutely right. The senator is absolutely right. This would be a permissible expense because it is in our, carrying out our duties would be allowed.
Thank you, Senator Boysko. I'm sorry, Senator DeStaff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may, Senator Boysko. So I'm looking at lines 649, where it talks about contributions to a candidate or his campaign committee shall not be converted by any person to personal use. Then as we go down through there, we have tuition, household food items, but it says that specifically any funds from his campaign shall not be converted by any person for personal use. So my question is this, and my scenario, if I have college students who are volunteering on my campaign and they put in 500 or 1,000 hours, let's say they put in 500 hours over the span of 3 months or 4 months. If I want to write them a check, not for salary, but a check for tuition, is that allowable under this?
Mr. Chair, Senator DeStaff, tuition for, I would not know what that tuition would be for. I would say that if you have interns that are working on your campaign, if you choose to reimburse them for expenses, if you choose to give them some sort of a prize, if you choose to give them gas money, those would all be permissible because they have been giving their time and talent to you.
Mr.
And
Chairman.
you voted for this. This went out unanimously last year, and this language was all here, Mr. Chair.
Senator DeStaff.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask our counsel here, given that scenario, and I'll repeat it just to make sure I'm clear, if I have college students who are working for me during a campaign, would I be allowed to write a check to them for tuition if I didn't pay them a salary?
Mr. Chair, Senator, under the language of the bill, that would be unclear. You would probably have to go and get an advisory opinion to clarify that. I'm not sure if the FEC has spoken to that specific issue, but there's also FEC opinions that would get pulled in pursuant to the third enactment. So you'd have to look at those opinions to see whether they included something like that. But what is in the bill, it's not entirely clear whether or not that would be permissible or impermissible. But you'd use the irrespective test. Would you be giving them that irrespective of your campaign?
Thank you. For a question for the patron, real quick. Senator Boysko, thank you for bringing this bill forward as well. This is the same bill that passed last year unanimously out the Senate, correct?
Mr. Chair, this passed unanimously out of the Senate.
Thank you. Senator Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking to the bill.
You have the floor.
Thank you. With all due respect to everybody who's given the questions here, I think we're talking about a bill that's going to clean up how people use their campaign funds. And I think we can what if this to death, but at the end of the day, like we can just look at the lived experience of pretty much the rest of the country, including at the federal level, and we can see we can see who's being charged with these crimes, right? And the people that are being charged with these crimes are, they're not giving snacks to workers. They're not paying their interns. They're doing some really weird stuff and some really corrupt stuff. And I mean, I think let's not lose sight of the fact, right, that this is about a public trust, and it's not, I don't think, about people trying to do a gotcha to jam up a politician. I mean, I suppose could that happen in a scenario? I suppose it could, but I don't think, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong with actual facts, I don't think we're seeing that in other places. I don't think we're seeing other states where politicians are being jammed up about the scenarios that have been given today. And so I guess my plea to the committee is that we just keep our eyes on the prize here, and that we focus on the fact that this is good policy. It's the right thing to do. I guess there's a world where that may crimp us up and not like it, but I don't know. I don't think so, because I don't use my campaign funds for this anyway, because I want to win elections. But having said that, at the appropriate time, I have a motion.
Thank you, Senator Valkenburg. We will have, in light of everyone having a chance to comment and propose scenarios, there has been a motion. What's your motion, sir?
Move to report.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
And Finance wants it, so the motion needs to be referred to Finance.
To report and re-refer to Finance.
And there's a second. Please open the vote. I'm sorry. Speaking to the motion.
So, Mr. Chairman, I've spent a lot of time reading this, and that was just one of the examples. I think what we're trying to do here is legislate morality. And let me explain my vote, because I'm getting ready to vote no on a bill, and I'll probably be the only one here to vote no. Today,
well, just a moment, Senator Steph. And I want you to be able to explain your vote, but we've heard testimony. It's been debated. It's questioned. You are most happy to vote as you will. Explain your vote, but please be succinct in your comments.
okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll make them very succinct. Everything we do with our campaign funds is on the record. It's in the press. It's on VPAP. It's on State Board of Elections. Everything that we do, every dime we spend. And I know that we've seen stuff all over the country on people who have misspent campaign funds. I've not seen a lot of it or heard about a lot of it here in Virginia. And I think part of the reason for that is the transparency we have with systems like VPAP has in the way we have to put information out there. So I'll be voting no, because I think what we're trying to do here is legislate morality. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator D. Steph. Please open the vote. And close the vote.
Ayes 13, noes 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee.
Thank you. Senator McPike is up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have before you Senate Joint Resolution 3. This is the constitutional amendment on second read to correct a wrong within a gap that was created under previous language. Right now, under our Constitution, we afford property tax exemption for 100% disabled. We afford for those families that have members that were killed in action. But what we don't have is those that died in the line of duty. And so this is in case, for instance, an example, a service member dies in training in the service to their country, their surviving spouse does not qualify. And so, Mr. Chairman, what this seeks to do, it is on second read, and so if it passes both chambers this year, it would be on the ballot for consideration of the voters this November. That is the essence of the bill, Mr. Chairman, is trying to close that gap that is in our Constitution to help the dozens of families that have unfortunately lost their loved ones in the line of duty but don't qualify under the other conditions.
Thank you, Senator Pike, for bringing this all-important bill, Constitutional Amendment, forward. Do you have anyone who want to speak to in support of the bill? Thank you. Please state your name and if you represent a group for the record.
Susan Depp from Stafford County. I'm with the Virginia Military Surviving Spouses Working Group. The DOD and VA do not confer benefits based on killed in action, and there's a very good reason for that. I'll give you a quick example. Very egregious scenario. Two service members in a combat zone. One, a reluctant but dutiful mess hall worker who dies by a missile strike. The surviving spouse will get this limited real estate tax benefit. Another service member is a well-decorated sniper who takes out many enemy combatants, survives the combat tour, returns home stateside, dies in a line of duty accident. The spouse receives no tax benefit. So if the VA and the DOD do not use killed in action as a criterion, which they shouldn't, then neither should we. It's a misconception that equates to bravery. The bravery happens when they enlist and give up their personal rights and they perform their duties. So please fix this and support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your support. Is there anyone in opposition? Do you have anyone online? No one online? Any comments from the committee?
Move to
Questions?
report.
There's a motion. There's a second. Please open the vote. You can close the rolls.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Thank you, Senator Pike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And next up is Senate Bill 4, which is the ballot bill associated with it, which provides the specific language to be.
Just one second, Senator Pike.
No, he's answering it. Never mind.
Oh, okay. You may continue, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 4 lays out the precise language which is to be printed on the ballot. So this is the ballot bill itself on lines 45 through 47. Reads, question, should the Constitution of Virginia be amended so that the tax exemption that is currently available to the surviving spouses of soldiers killed in action is also available to surviving spouses of soldiers who died in the line of duty?
Okay.
And you can see the changes necessary to the constitutional language of Article 10.
Thank you, sir. Anyone speak in support of it? Anyone in opposition? Any online?
Move to report.
But just one second. This bill has to go to finance as well with the other one, so is there a motion to report and refer to finance?
Motion to report and refer to finance.
Open the, I'm sorry? There's a motion, there's a second. Senator Sturdivant?
Just a quick clarification. It says soldiers, specifies soldiers. We're not leaving any members of the armed forces out by using that term.
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe we are, as soldiers as a term of service, but I'll open it up to others.
Senator Durant?
Under Section A already in the Constitution, line 21 of this bill, for instance, is an example. It is using soldiers, so it's referencing the same language that's already in our Constitution.
Does that satisfy your question? This is on the second reading, is that correct?
This is on second read.
So if council, if you want to understand that distinction for members of the committee.
Mr. Chair, Senators, I'm not sure if this would be exclusionary, as Senator Pike said. It's what's already in the Constitution, so you use that term again. So I think it would be interpreted as being inclusive, but I'm not quite sure there. I will say, because this is on second read, if there are any changes to this, then that would negate the first read, and this would basically be a first read bill, and we'd have to bring it back in 2 years to hear it again. So it's important that it be passed the same way that it was passed the first time. Mm-hmm. There are no chances for amendments in that sense. So.
Does that satisfy you all? All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please open the vote. Thank you, Senator.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next, we have Senator Obenshain is on next up.
Mr. Chairman,
Senate Bill 572, you're in much better shape than I haven't run up those 3, 4 flights of steps.
572 or 577?
Sorry?
572.
572.
577.
577, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, you're right. 577. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senate Bill 577 deals with Soil and Water Conservation Board candidates. I don't know how it is in other parts of the state, but it is a real testament to one's commitment to public service in my part of the state to throw your name in and agree to run for Soil and Water Conservation Board. It actually has a lot of responsibilities in agricultural regions, but we are not awash in candidates. And in 2020, a bill passed the General Assembly that imposed many of the campaign finance obligations on Soil and Water Conservation Board candidates, including the establishment of a depository, not suppository, depository. Many of these candidates, they don't raise any money. They don't contribute anything to their campaigns. They collect the signatures and they get on the ballot and do a little bit of grassroots campaigning and run their campaigns the old-fashioned way. And there is great confusion around the state among election officials as to whether, even if they have no money, deposit no money, raise no money, contribute no money, as to whether they are required nonetheless to open a bank account. And what this does, and this is not just a hypothetical issue in Page County. Members of the Soil and Water Conservation Board came to me with exactly that situation, said, I don't understand why I've got to do this. It makes absolutely no sense, and it doesn't. In many areas of the state, they are counseled that that law doesn't apply if you're not raising money. In other areas of the state, they've been told you have to open a depository. What this bill does is it tries to thread the needle. If you're going to raise money to run, if you're going to contribute money to your own account, you've got to open a depository. You've got to comply with all of the campaign finance laws. But if you certify that you are not raising any money, you are not contributing any money to your campaign, you don't have to comply with that 2020 requirement of designating a depository and opening an account, just trying to encourage participation in this important area of public service.
Thank you, Senator Obenshain. We will get questions from the committee. Is there anyone speaking in support of this bill?
You can ask her if she has a depository.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Dr. Kendall Tyree. I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Association of Soil and Water Conservation Districts. Our soil and water districts, as you noted, those directors are unpaid volunteers. The majority do not spend or receive funds and are rather often farmers who are wanting to volunteer their time to improve and provide guidance to the Virginia Ag Cost Share Program and projects implemented by our soil and water conservation districts. We support passage of the bill, really to encourage participation in this volunteer role, but also to address issues that our directors faced this past cycle.
Thank you. Is there anyone to speak in opposition to this? Questions from the committee? Senator Roan.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, a question for the patron.
You may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, I would ask the senator in this case that when you have a lot of areas of the Commonwealth right now that are basically deemed as non-competitive from one party or the other, and then up and down the ballot, what you'll end up seeing are a lot of candidates on the general election ballot where it's just they run unopposed, right? And then they also run unopposed in the primary before that. Town council candidates, this is a great example, for instance, where you might have just enough candidates to actually get, to actually fill all the seats. Sometimes you actually don't. And yet, we are not affording them in town council or other offices here the same sort of thing that we would have for soil and for the soil and water conservation districts. And so my question to the senator here is, why specify the soil and water conservation districts as a particular class that doesn't have to do this when you can have plenty of other examples of what we might consider redundancies, but we still include them?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, one, because I'm not aware of any candidates for other levels of office that don't raise any money. Moreover, I'm also not aware of anybody who serves on a town council, board of supervisors, or in other positions like that who doesn't get paid for doing it. These folks are 100% volunteers, and in many of the jurisdictions I represent, you know, it's very interesting. Sometimes there are 4 or 5 people running for 2 slots. Other times there are 2 people running. Sometimes there's 1 person running for 2 slots. In Augusta County this year, they had 3 people running for 2 slots, one of whom was a write-in, none of whom, I believe, raised any money, and there's absolutely no compensation for them. So I think their situation is a little bit unique, and I'm just trying to keep this very narrow, not to open up a big hole in our campaign finance laws.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, a question for council. Mr. Chairman, I would ask council in this case, would they be able to verify that that number 1, we do not have any paid Soil and Water Conservation District board members throughout this Commonwealth, and that number 2, there are not any other town council or any other seats elsewhere in the Commonwealth that go unpaid?
Mr. Chair, Senator, I can say I'm not aware of any paid or unpaid, but we might have someone who can.
I can speak to Soil and Water Conservation Directors. They're not allowed to take compensation for their role.
Thank you. Senator Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And maybe I'm reading this wrong, and this might be a question for council or for the patron, but on line 36, isn't it saying that a candidate for local office or the Soil and Water? So isn't this actually more expansive than Soil and Water as written?
Mm-hmm. You may be right. It is my intention to confine this to soil and water conservation. I would consider that a friendly amendment to strike for local office.
So moved.
So moved. All in.
Yeah, through or, right? Yeah, so I would move to amend line 36 and strike.
Thank you.
For local office or.
There's a amendment and a second. All in favor? Aye. All right. All opposed? All right. I think, thank you, Senator Van Valkenburg, for that. I think that helps me with this bill as well. As I originally read it before the amendment, I had some consternation about local office, but this is specific to soil and water, which...
That was always my intention, and
okay.
If I crossed up my drafters, I apologize to them.
If we just have general counsel ensure that the local office or piece is amended throughout. There was only 2 places throughout this bill.
Mr. Chair.
All right, just when we're good. All right, thank you. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I would move to report as amended Senate Bill 577.
All right, please open up. There we go.
Ayes 14, no 0.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Senator Subramanian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The bill is Senate Bill 605. It's pretty simple. We're basically right now, if you have a physical disability, you're allowed to do curbside voting. And we're basically just trying to take out physical and make it open to all people with disabilities. And this was in consultation with folks in the disability community. They felt like someone with a mental impairment could also take advantage of this ability to do curbside voting too. And so happy to answer any questions. And I think we have a couple people who are also testifying remotely as well as maybe in person as well.
All right, first we'll start with those who are here. We ask you to come up and state your name. You will have approximately 1 minute for your remarks.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. I'm Colleen Miller from the Disability Law Center of Virginia. Just to let you know that every year we survey polling places to see if they're accessible to people with disabilities. This year in November, we surveyed more than 500 polling places. And one of the things that we did was we asked poll workers whether curbside voting was difficult, was a pain, whether there were obstacles to them. The vast majority of the poll workers told us that curbside voting is really not a challenge. We think that expanding curbside voting to be available to people with other kinds of disabilities that may make it difficult to vote other than physical disabilities is a good step for us to make, and it will not pose a heavy burden to poll workers. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Faison. I represent the Virginia Association of Community Services Boards, and we support this bill.
Good afternoon, Chris DeRosa, League of Women Voters. League of Women Voters of Virginia supports SB 605. We're committed to removing barriers to voting so that every eligible Virginian has the opportunity to vote in every election. Disability has been called the minority group that everyone can join. If entering a polling place presents a problem to a voter, the nature of a person's disability should not determine whether they can use curbside voting. SB 605 will include any permanent or temporary disability and will help election officials understand how best to assist curbside voters. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Terry Morgan with the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities, and for the reasons stated, we support this bill.
Does anyone want to speak in opposition of the bill? Do we have any comments from the members of the committee?
Move to report.
I'm sorry. One second. We do have people online, so let's get them first. And for those who are online, if you can hear me, you will have 1 minute for your remarks. And just for the record's sake, this is the first time we had our the second meeting, but the first time we had our virtual participation policy in hand. I will read it just for the record, and then we'll take our first virtual participant. Our virtual policy states virtual participation is welcome in the legislative process to ensure that the process runs as smoothly as possible. Virtual participants must sign up to speak 1/2 hour before the committee begins. Virtual participation is only possible on bills that will be heard in full committee. Subcommittees will not be taking virtual comments. Participant must be Virginians or recognized subject matter experts. All participants must state who they are, the jurisdiction they reside in, and whether they are representing a group before they present their comments. A presenter on the virtual platform must have the camera on and be physically present in the virtual space. The chair will announce at the beginning of the public comment period how much time will be allotted to each speaker. Again, that time allotted to each speaker will be 1 minute. Please call the first virtual participant.
Angie, please unmute, turn on your camera, and begin your testimony.
Thank you. I don't know if I'm for or against this bill because as a person that has moved in the polls, one of the issues you get is people trying to help. A carload of people comes, only one person is voting curbside, and everybody in the car is trying to help them vote. And so you don't know whether that person has authorized all of those people, and so it causes a little bit of an issue for the poll worker. So I guess I would ask that there be clarity surrounding these issues that you will encounter outside the polls and not within the confines of the polls, since you're, out on the curb. So I'm not sure if I'm for or against it. I just don't think it's defined well enough how to assist people that come with these disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carolyn Kaywood, please unmute and begin your testimony.
Thank you. My name is Carolyn Kaywood. I live in Virginia Beach. I'm a member of Rev Up Virginia, which is a coalition of organizations that are concerned for the voting rights of persons with disabilities. The Rev Up Virginia supports Senate Bill 605. Some years ago, I was very grateful for curbside voting when I had a medical complication arise. The Officer of Elections treated me with courtesy and did not question me about my disability. I don't think there should be questions about the nature of the disability. Thank you.
Thank you.
Connor Cummings, please unmute and begin your testimony.
Thank you. My name is Connor Cummings. I am a self-advocate and proud to connect.
I'm sorry, we're having a hard time hearing you. Can we hear him?
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Connor Cummings. I am a self-advocate and proud to be autistic. I, like so many others, want to vote. I want to be heard. Voting is power. Voting is speaking out on our needs, choosing who we feel will help the most. On my good days, I love to walk in and to vote. I probably wear my I voted sticker, and I feel like I have done my patriotic duty. Voting is a privilege. I love history, and each vote helps write the next story. I get that patriotic, proud feel on voting day. Mail-in ballots have no feel, and voting earlier is better, but it's not the same. Sometimes I get so excited I may say the Pledge of Allegiance or sing a patriotic song. I take my Mickey Mouse ears off when I vote. On days I have my struggles to walk into a room where there may be lines and the noise of people talking, the brightness of the lights.
Mr. Connor. Mr. Connor, thank you for your remarks. Being that we had a hard time hearing you from the start, I'll grant you 30 seconds, sir.
I don't want to, but it happens. My mom stayed by my side and does her best, but for these moments, these unexpected times, curbside voting is a solution. It's my accommodation. I didn't get the experience I hoped for, but I tried it, and most times I succeed. The times I can't, curbside voting allows me to vote in or then when I'm comfortable. Please don't use your vote to take that away. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lucy Beednell, please unmute and begin your testimony.
Lucy Beednell from the Arc of Northern Virginia. We wanted to say we're strongly in support of this bill and have been working on it for years. I will say that we have gotten clarification that existing law makes sure that if new voter accommodations are made, that there is training provided to all polling place workers. That will include any law changes to voting this year, so that will take care of any concerns about how poll workers implement this. I will say we've spent more than a year talking with poll workers all over Northern Virginia who have a tremendous amount of confusion because since 1990, federal law has made curbside voting legal for anyone who needs it, but not Virginia law. And our poll workers find themselves in the place of having to go out to the curb and interrogate people on the nature of their disability and make a judgment call. That's not good support of them, and they have told us over and over again it's so much easier to allow people to need the accommodation to have it, that they have no concerns about abuse. Since this has been federal law since 1990, there are no federal concerns about this being abused, and there is no cost. This is long overdue, a common sense loophole fix to make sure anyone with a disability who needs curbside voting accommodations can get it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gayleen Knoyton, please unmute and begin your testimony.
Good afternoon. My name is Gayleen Knoyton. I am with the Virginia NAACP, the Political Action Chair, and we are in support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Gayleen. Is that everyone? Thank you. Senator Sturtevant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, and this is primarily my ignorance, but as I'm reading current law allows any voter with a physical or temporary physical disability, a permanent physical disability or a temporary physical disability, or who is 65 or older to do curbside voting. Is that right?
Is that a question?
Yeah.
I believe that's how I think.
Okay, and follow-up question, Mr. Chair.
Senator, continue.
And so what this bill is revising is the specification that it be a physical disability, and so it can be any disability at all. And so I guess my question is what are the non-physical, and so I assume mental or cognitive disabilities that we would be opening this up to? I guess it'd be helpful to have examples of what it is exactly we're talking about that would be allowing curbside voting for.
Senator, please address the chair first, then thank you. Please state your name and.
I think the most common example of this would be somebody with autism who maybe wants to vote in person, gets to the polling place, sees the crowd, is overcome by the sensory stimulation, and just can't do it. I think that's the most common example that we have heard about, complaint we've heard about the most.
Thank you, Dessus.
The point that was made during the testimony was sometimes it's a hard call to tell whether the disability qualifies, and sometimes you have to decide whether the disability is worthy of curbside voting, and we just want to remove that requirement. And the other thing is this also includes training for poll workers as well on curbside voting. We added a section E there on training.
Thank you, Senator. Is there a motion?
Move to report.
Second.
This doesn't have to go to finance, does it? Okay. There's a motion. There's a second. Please open the vote.
Ayes 12, no 0, 2 abstentions.
Thank you,
Mr.
Senator.
Chair.
Next we have Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got Senate Bill 303. And, Mr. Chairman, it's a very simple bill. If you go to line 60, it simply says that when a voter votes, the machine shall produce a printed receipt for the person who cast that ballot that shows the date and time they voted, the number corresponding in order to which ballots were cast, and their selections. And that's what the bill does. How would I explain this concisely? Because I know you always have a big docket. And so there are folks out there who question our election system. And I'm not suggesting today that we have a problem in Virginia with our elections. But what I would say is if there are people, our constituents or others in the community or the state of Virginia who believe that there's a problem, then maybe then that's the problem at a minimum, because everyone should have faith in their election system. And I think this is a really simple way to let people know that their vote was counted. And that's it. That's the bill.
Thank you. Have anyone here to speak in support?
I did not ask anyone to come.
Anyone in opposition? Are you here in support or? I'm in support. Please state to the podium. State your name.
Thank you. My name is Erin Joyce. I'm a resident of Alexandria. I also volunteer for a nonprofit called Electoral Process Education Corporation. We're a nonprofit charity, and we're devoted to educating the public about elections, how they're managed. We're tech-focused, so we do a lot of analysis of the daily absentee list, the DAL. And just looking over the bill, I'm not here to represent EPIC, but in my personal capacity, helping to administer a nonprofit that studies these issues. We've looked at votes that were counted at midnight. Now, we know that the DAO wasn't open and the CAP wasn't processing. We think it's just a simple correction in the Veris database and the process by which the workers enter the data. So I wanted to point that out because we've done a lot of work on this and we think it's an easy fix. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone to speak in opposition of the bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Katie Boyle with the Virginia Association of Counties, and we don't have a position on the sort of the merits of this type of machinery, but it is our understanding that the voting machines that are currently in use don't allow for this function, and so new machines would have to be acquired. Equipment costs would be a great area for the state to assist with localities as a funding partner, but at least in recent years that hasn't been the case, and so localities have covered the cost for equipment replacement. So we would respectfully ask that if you choose to move forward with this measure, that the state would assist in purchasing any necessary equipment that would need to be acquired. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Eben.
For the last speaker, if we were to pass this bill and have it take effect July 1st, does that mean we need to have new voting machines by November, or when is it? How would you see the mandate from this bill being met?
It might need to defer to the patron on the intent here. I was interpreting it that you would probably need to have it ready for the next time you would use it, is how I read the bill, but I could stand to be corrected.
Mr. Chairman, I could redirect my question to Senator Stewart or to council. If this bill passes, do you have a budget amendment in to buy the voting machines necessary to fulfill this mandate?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Eben, I did not, because my understanding that the vast majority of the machines can do this already. The optical scanning machines that we use produces a printout at the end of the day to give you the tabulation of all the votes and the data that was entered. And I believe that that machine could also produce an individual receipt. That may not be true with all machines, but I think the majority of them do. No, I did not put a budget amendment in for this, so it would be a burden on the locality.
Senator Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking to the bill, Mr. Chair.
So you have the floor.
Thank you. I guess I'll say two things towards the bill, but I'll focus on the second point. I mean, I think the first point, trust is a funny subject on elections in this moment, and I think who's responsible for that lack of trust and how elections get talked about nationally is, I think, a huge problem. But I think one thing that's worth thinking about with this bill is kind of a more historical setting, which is to say that, you know, when you look at democracies across predominantly Europe and America in the 1800s, one of the big reforms people fought for was the privacy of the ballot box, because when people had to vote in public, they had the pressures of, you know, the landowners whose land they lived on, or their boss, or their whatever it is. And, you know, someone like John Stuart Mill, that was one of the big fights of his career, which is somebody I think that people on the left and right like to look to. And I really worry about this bill from that perspective, which is to say somebody would then have a receipt and everybody would know they would have a receipt to ask for who they voted for. And I worry about the kind of pressure that gets put on the individual citizen in certain circumstances. And so that's kind of why I'm going to respectfully vote no, Senator Stewart, when the time is right.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Sturtevant. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I read the bill, Senator Stewart, I don't necessarily read it as meaning that the machine itself has to print the receipt. Section B says the board may approve any kind of electronic voting system that meets the following requirements. And then yours is number 15 that says a printed receipt. It doesn't say the machine itself has to print it, but just that the system that they adopt has to provide them with a receipt with the date and time of their vote. And it specifically does not say that it says who they voted for. And so I tend to think that this could pass and would require localities to come up with a way to provide a receipt, but it doesn't necessarily require all of the voting machines to print out a receipt, as I read your bill.
Mr. Chairman, I think Senator is right. I just assumed that we would do it in the machine. It would be the simplest way, since that machine already produces a printout anyway. Mm-hmm. But I think the senator is exactly correct.
Thank you. We have one person online want to speak to this bill. You have 1 minute for your remarks.
You can begin your testimony.
Hi, thank you. My name is Marina Egger, and I am 42 years old, and I moved to Reston, Virginia almost 6 years ago, and I just love it here. And I remember the date that I was issued my Virginia voting registration notice from the Virginia Department of Elections, and it was issued to me on May 20th, 2022. And I voted at the South Lakes High School in Reston, Virginia. We made it to our polling place within the school, and I was nervous, even though I knew the polling people were professionals. And I do have TBI, which in some cases, including mine, comes with mobility and navigation issues. And I was able to find my way thanks to the help of my fiance and the people that were, and the other professionals there. I also have aphasia, which is a language disorder. It's sometimes difficult to communicate in coercive sentences. So I'm one of the many individuals who would greatly, greatly, greatly benefit from the curbside voting because of the points that I just made.
Ms. Marina, I regret to inform you that bill has already been heard before the committee. We thank you for your, but it passed. It passed the committee. It's already been heard, but we thank you for your comments.
All right, thank you so very, very much. Appreciate
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. I think that, I have serious concerns with this bill, Senator Stewart, just about the door it would open up when, at a time where Americans should absolutely continue to have privacy in the voting booth. You go into that voting booth alone, nobody should come out with you, so to speak. And so I'll entertain a motion. Is there a secondary motion? Substitute motion. Second. Is there a second? Second. We have a substitute motion to pass by indefinitely. Please open the vote.
Ayes 8, noes 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
The committee.
Thank you, sir. Next, we will have members from the committee. We will start with Senator Durant. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Senate Bill, I have to know my bill numbers, 406, thank you, seeks to provide more clarity and transparency with sample ballots. This proposed bill requires sample ballots to disclose who paid for them and whether they are authorized by a political party, and it's necessary in order to prevent any type of malfeasance, I guess, that can happen in the voting process, particularly in the early voting process. In this last election cycle, we had some candidates who created counterfeit sample ballots, both for the Republican and Democrat sample ballots, in order to, I guess, trick people into believing that they were had received an actual
endorsement.
Thank you, by the party. So these were counterfeit sample ballots that were being distributed at the polling places, and we had particularly folks that were very upset at the polling location when they realized that they were not giving one that was actually the authentic one from the party. Thank you.
The floor is yours.
So, as you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, as you know, there is no recourse for someone who is tricked into believing that they were given something that was authentic from their party, and that led to some frustration and dissolution, particularly those who are elderly that were relying on that. So, in working with the Commonwealth Attorney from Spotsylvania County and some other folks as well, we sought to ensure that we were not suppressing speech, but that we were offering some more transparency and clarification in this process so that people could really have trust and faith in the early voting process particularly. And I do have several folks who have come to offer some more clarification in drafting of this. I would like the committee to know this does have bipartisan support. So Delegate Cole from the House is carrying the Cognate bill, and both parties have come together. I think at the end of the day, it's like if you have earned that vote, you should be able to say, I've gotten the endorsement, and not disillusion our voters into believing that there's something that's not honest.
Thank you, Senator. And so you have how many patrons here or experts here to speak in support of the bill? If you can and you will, just simply state your name, where you're from, and whether you support or oppose. I'll put a total time limit of 3 minutes.
Mr. Chair, one of the drafters is here from the Commonwealth's Attorney. Is he allowed to give a little bit of clarification on the language with your permission?
If he wants to take up all the 3 minutes, sure. Start that clock.
Yes, my name is Mo Petway. I'm from Spotsylvania County. I just want to say real quick that I'm here today to support the SB Bill 406. However, I think you should go further. And what I'm saying you go further because the fake and deceptive means that's taking place in Spotsylvania County, the individuals coming to the polls, they're taking ballots that look exactly like the two oppositions, and he himself meet people and go to people and say, I'm representing them, and here's the ballot that you get. Throughout history of America, people of color have always been deceived. There's been efforts to interfere, trickery, or intimidate voters. In our county, we have people to do that, right? And real quick, like deception, okay? Deception is an act of misleading, hide the truth, or promote belief, concept, or ideas is not true. And what we have is that happen. Real quick, I just want you to imagine, if you go to a hospital and somebody come out with a white suit and a skeptical and they're not a doctor, and they tell you, say, come go with me. And a lot of times senior citizens follow that because we go to the place where it's supposed to be that, and they do that. I want you to help me. Please support that bill. Please go further. Do not. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Jeff Kent. I'm a citizen of Spotsylvania County. I was on the ground for a lot of early voting and had to deal with these sample ballots being handed out and the confusion and anger that it took for us to explain to people that the things they were being given were not the things that they expected them to be. It's broken trust with voters. I saw voters leave and not vote because they were so upset about it. And I think this goes a long way to fixing that hole that is created with the current bill. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Ryan Mahaffey. I'm the Commonwealth Attorney for Spotsylvania County. Thank you for having me here today. I'd like to submit a couple pieces of paper and ask that they be entered into the record. The first, it's titled Sample Ballot, and you'll see in 7-point font the required disclosure as current law requires. And then you'll see, as way of example, what the disclosure would look like under the proposed bill. With this original sample disclosure, this tiny sample disclosure is only required if the person spent over $200. And the people that were engaging this sort of activity have already figured out that they can have people that didn't spend $200 during the election cycle to come up with a sample ballot and not have to put anything at all. This is just additional speech that works to counteract malicious actors that would trick people into voting for them. And make no mistake about it, the people that were engaging in this activity before have figured it out. And what they're going to do is they're going to Xerox the Republican and the Democratic sample ballot, fill in whatever bubbles they want, and then just get somebody that hasn't spent any campaign money to go print off as many copies as $200 allow them. And then another person after that, and another person after that. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll pass up these pieces of paper.
He took all your time. No, I'm just messing with you. Please come up and please come up and you please come up and speak. I'm just pulling your leg there.
I should have jumped the line. Very quickly, the League of Women Voters supports SB 406 because it will lead to increased transparency around sources and content of campaign funding and materials.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone to speak in opposition of the bill? Any comments from the committee? Senator Sturdivant.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Durant, this is not going to prevent third parties or other groups from having their own sample ballot. It would just prevent individuals from saying they're endorsed by the Democrat Party or the Republican Party if they haven't been. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes, Senator, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any last comments from you?
I think just, Mr. Chair, I think that we were very, very careful to ensure that we were not doing anything that affects free speech in the marketplace of ideas. We're just seeking to make sure that we are ensuring that faith and trust in the electorate when they come to early voting or to the day of voting, that they're getting honest information and that they can have trust in the system, in the process, that in the exchange of ideas and information.
Thank you, Senator. Is there anyone online? No. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Please open the vote.
Ayes 14, no 0.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Senator, Senator D. Steph is not here. Senator Sturdivant.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is Senate Bill 527. If you have been in the General Assembly the last 10 years or so, you've probably had a chance to review or vote on the Convention of States resolution. It's gone through the House a couple of times. It's gone through the Senate a couple of times. That is not this bill. So this is not the Convention of States resolution asking for Virginia to become an additional state to sign on to the requests that have been made by 19 other states to call for an Article 5 convention to amend the Constitution. What this is, it's something different. It is a bill that outlines the process by which the delegates to the Article 5 Constitutional Convention to amend the Constitution, how those delegates would be selected. And so one of the things that myself and other advocates have heard over the years when the resolution to call an Article 5 convention have come up is, well, how would the delegates to the convention be identified and be selected? And so that's what this bill is that's before you today. It's not, as I said, it's not a vote on the resolution itself. It's a vote that, should we get there down the road, this is how the delegates would be selected. And it's a fairly simple process whereby delegates are selected by both the House and the Senate. The selections have to pass both chambers, and it goes into the details of the qualifications of the delegates, the oath that they must take, and also creates an advisory committee, which again is made up by members of the General Assembly, so that these delegates can be recalled and replaced if necessary. And so that is really the long and short of the bill. It's a relatively simple bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has. And I know we have several people here to speak in support of the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Those who want to speak in support, please line up here, and you will have is one person speaking for the entire group? Okay, sir. You have your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Philip Whitaker. I'm a voter in Virginia, and I'm here in support of Senate Bill 527, and I stand with 80,000 other of my Virginia citizens who are in support of the General Convention of States Article 5 resolution, and several of our members are here today to stand to be recognized as well as in support of this bill. The United States of America has been a beacon to liberty for the entire world since the Declaration of Independence, and especially the ratification of the shortest and now the longest enduring governing document in the Western world. This was not a perfect government in 1787, and it's not a perfect government today. But our founders gave us their best effort toward a more perfect union. They knew, and we should know and be committed, that any government formed by imperfect people is not going to be perfect, but we need to continue the effort toward that ideal. Today, the greatest and freest nation on earth has been perilously tilted toward tyranny by an ever-growing and consuming federal bureaucracy that has writhed its way outside the liberty-protecting limits of the Constitution itself. The escape of this monster of citizen control was not by any one or two large acts, but decades of slow expansionism whose ultimate purpose is outside the Constitution and seeks individual citizen control beyond the constitutional limits. Just as Virginia led the way in the establishment of our liberty in 1787, we're called today to stand in defense of liberty by using the tools the Constitution in Article 5 gave us that instructs us how to apply that resolution for a constitutional amendment, for a constitutional convention to propose amendments. Virginians continue to join this effort and demonstrate across party lines a strong majority support of the effort. In order to address the concerns of legislatures, because the General Assembly members have not yet been convinced of its efficacy and safety, in order to address those concerns, Senate Bill 527 lays out the details, the control, and the establishment of the General Assembly as the governing authority over the delegates to an Article 5 convention. And we seek the approval of this bill. I ask you to vote in favor of it, to a vote to the full Senate, so that the Virginia General Assembly, our primary governing body for the citizens of this Commonwealth, can be in charge of this process from beginning to end.
Thank you, sir.
Chairman, Senators, my name is John Damon. I'm State Director for Convention of States, Virginia. I'm asking you to consider this amendment. It's not a matter of if, but when the convention will happen. And again, Virginia doesn't have to be a part of the states calling a convention. We wish they would, but it's, again, a matter of time before it happens. You all are the strongest body of government in the United States when working in unison with other states, and we're asking you to consider this bill on how to regulate who and how they would represent us in this convention should it be called. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone speaking in opposition of the bill? Noted. Thank you. Do you want to speak in support? You have 30 seconds, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Nancy Smith. I'm a citizen of Henrico County, and I am not terribly familiar with this, but I do want to speak in support of Convention of States and any processes that assist that. As we all know, we have a runaway federal government. We have the rule of law being broken every day. We have Congress who acts outside of its authority. We have the executive branch and the judicial branch who has less and less trust, and we believe do not follow the Constitution of the United States. So any efforts towards a convention and the process that it takes to support that, I'm in favor of. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, is he speaking? We'll take him later. He's for his support. We have one virtual testimony. Sir, you have 1 minute for your remarks.
My name is Harry Herkert. I'm a Fairfax voter and a Convention of States regional captain representing COS supporters in Senate Districts 35, 36, 37, Senator Salim's district, I might add. Hello, Senator Salim, and Senate District 38. Also, the 8 House districts across those Senate districts. I appreciate the opportunity that the committee has provided me to support Bill 527, Senate Bill 527. It seems prudent to me that the Assembly provide a solid foundation early and avoid last-minute maneuvers to satisfy requirements for professional involvement in an amendments convention. And like it was said before, even if Virginia doesn't vote, it will probably join the convention instead of being another Rhode Island participant, or non-participant, I should say. Therefore, I request that the committee pass SB 520 and allow for robust.
Did they sign up prior to? They signed up prior to? Okay. Okay. And she's speaking in support? Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Angie, you can unmute and begin your testimony.
Just briefly, I would like to support the Convention of States as allowed by Article 5 of our Constitution, and I support that Virginia be prepared should we decide to invoke this option for the state of Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone speaking in opposition to the bill?
The League of Women Voters urges the committee to reject any effort to develop mechanisms to organize a constitutional amendment under Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution, which is the foundation of our nation's democratic republic. The Constitution has made our country great. A constitutional convention would open the entire Constitution to unknown, unpredictable propositions. It could endanger or destabilize our system of government. As for the details of the bill, we contend that any convention should be limited to a specific topic, that delegates must be selected by the citizens, that voting should be by the delegates and not the states, and that the entire process must be transparent and not conducted in secret. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have comments from the committee. Senator McGuire.
I was going to say I support this bill, and at the proper time, I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Eben.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just want to point out on lines 107 to 111, it says that people who were delegates to a constitutional convention from Virginia shall not publicly contradict the delegation on a matter in which the delegation has taken a formal position. No delegate other than one designated to communicate with the mass media on behalf of the delegation shall communicate with the mass media about convention business. I think for people who are advocating for a constitutional convention, I'm disappointed that they'd want to suspend freedom of speech for people who are participating, and I can't support this the way it is at all. But thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
May I wrap up?
I'm sorry, yes.
Thank you.
Yes,
to Senator Eben's point, I think his point is well taken, and it's, I think, one that a change that you'll probably see in the future, one that I'm happy to work with him to, in a floor amendment, should it get that far. But I would note, based on some of the comments that were made, if you're not familiar with the Article 5 Constitution, just go look at Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution. This process is in there. Most of us are not familiar with it until we get here and learn about it from the advocates, but it is a constitutionally created process. And what the beauty of this bill is, it is meant to address some of the issues that were raised in the comments, which are, it's this General Assembly that has the ability to put those instructions in place for those delegates as to what they can and cannot do, what they can and cannot vote on, and it's in that cause of transparency and representation that we brought this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Now I entertain a motion.
Move to report.
Move to report. Substitute motion. Move to pass by indefinitely.
Second.
Seven, no, 7.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Primary motion. Yeah, it'll fail also, but the primary motion was to report, and then that'll fail on the tie as well.
We have the primary motion now.
Mr. Chairman, the last motion was to PBI, was it not?
It failed. It failed, so now we have a primary motion.
To report and re-refer? Okay.
Ayes 7, no 7.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'd like to draw your attention to Senate Bill 301, Campaign Finance, and explain the bill.
You have the floor, sir.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear you.
You have the floor.
Got it. So, Mr. Chairman, the reason and the catalyst behind this bill is pretty simple. We have individuals who are on Board of Supervisors, school boards, soil and water conservation, and we have some of them, and this is across the state. This isn't just in Virginia Beach or any jurisdiction I represent. But what happens is we have some of them who are of an age that they don't do computers. And everybody who knows comment, if you don't do computers, there's no real way to do it. You have individuals on, for example, soil and water conservation boards who do not file their comment report, but they don't raise money, they don't spend any money, and they don't file the report. So what this bill does is gives them a way to challenge that and a board to evaluate and a way to discuss that. Here's some of the examples that have happened in the state. Soil and Water Board Conservation, 5 late reports because the individual doesn't do computers. 5 late reports, $4,100 in fees for a position that doesn't pay. That individual did not raise money, did not spend money, and when they went on the Soil and Water Conservation Board, they had no clue they had to file comment reports because they don't raise money and they don't spend money. Board of Supervisors, 1 late report, $100. Board of Supervisors, 5 late reports, $4,100. And this was after the individual no longer served on the Board of Supervisors. They forgot to close out their account. And they had never raised money in their last election on the account. Board of Supervisors, $1,100. Board of Supervisors, $1,100. I have tons of these where they're $3,100, $2,100, $3,100, $7,100. And this was somebody who was a school board candidate, filed their last report, had 8 late reports because when they got off the board, they did not close their reporting system or their account properly, and they hadn't raised money ever, and their hit was $7,100. But the issue is there's no way to appeal. There's no appeal process. What this does is provides an appeal process and puts the tolling or the additional tolls on hold until that can happen. Here's another example. So one of our treasurers for a senator and a House of Delegate member, they share treasurers, went on active duty. They missed the reporting period by 3 days. They were fined, but there's no way to report it. We had another member's treasurer who their mother passed away. According to the law, you only have 5 days that you can be late on this, even with the death of an individual. So they went out to California. They were 2 weeks late filing the report. They were handling their mom who had passed away. And by the time they got back, they were like, hey, I'd like to appeal it. The individual on orders, active duty orders, wanted to appeal it, but we have no appeal process. So what this does is puts in place an appeal process for instances like that where they can actually come in front of the State Board of Elections and appeal that process. Mr. Chairman, that's the bill.
Thank you, Senator Staff. Do you have anyone here to speak in support of the bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, David Bailey speaking on behalf of the Voter Registrars Association of Virginia. We appreciate the opportunity that we had to work with the senator. The initial draft of the bill had some concern, but we fully support the bill as it is now. The part that was taken out was going to have the local registrars involved in this, and we felt it was more appropriate that it all be handled by the State Board of Elections. And so that's our support of the bill. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Senator Abbott.
Please. Sorry.
Yeah, on the bill that I have in front of me, the introduced bill, I don't know, did we adopt a substitute? Because it says on line 38, the state board or local electoral board shall have the authority to extend a deadline.
Mm-hmm.
So the bill I have in front of me says the local electoral board does have that authority as well as the state board.
That's what the bill states. We didn't adopt the amendment.
I'm sorry. I'd like to move the amendment, Mr. Chairman.
Second. And can you state the amendment, and do we have a copy of it?
Mr. Chair, it's a substitute. It's an amendment in the nature of substitute, and it's available online.
Is it? Just 1 second.
And while folks are bringing it up, Mr. Chairman, I could probably go through another 400 or 500 examples where folks who are on soil and water conservations or retired from boards failed to end their account. We had one individual who inadvertently ended their account early, and they were hit with an $1,100 fine. But there needs to be an appeal process. We need to be able to appeal a decision and a fine. And frankly, if somebody's mom passes away, they should be able to call in and say, hey, I'm in California, I don't have the opportunity to do this, or I'm wherever and don't have the opportunity to do this. So, Mr. Chairman, that's, again, the catalyst behind this report. This bill. Sorry.
Are you speaking in support of the bill?
Yes, sir, I am.
Right,
Claire Brooke Wheeler, Albemarle County. I'm speaking very much in favor of this bill because I don't think that there may be someplace else in our law where there is no appeal, but certainly not in election finance reporting, campaign reporting. There should be an appeal. I've gotten nothing like the number of calls that the senators received, but I received a lot of calls from people saying, what do I do? My treasurer was deployed overseas. My family member died, and they won't give me an extension. I can't have an appeal, and boom, the fines keep clicking up. An $11,000 fine? This is a good governance bill that allows people to make appeals where they are necessary. I encourage you to support this bill. Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Bill.
The League of Women Voters generally supports the need for updating current rules for candidates' filings, including the passage of a more rational system for allowing candidates to utilize exceptions for catastrophic problems. However, we are concerned that some of the terms in this bill, such as, quote, reasonable considerations, unquote, are not clearly defined. We welcome an opportunity to work with Senator DeStaff on this important issue.
Thank you. Do we have anyone online? Any comments from the committee? I have just a couple concerns. With the bill, just as it states, I like the appeal process of the bill, but in this current language of the extension process, which was crossed out, lines 18 to 20, the state board or the general register shall be authorized to grant an extension for the filing deadline for a period not to exceed 5 days for good cause shown by the filer or found by the board register sufficient to justify the granting of the extension. My question to the patient, aren't filing deadlines, aren't candidates for office aware of filing deadlines?
Mr. Chair, I believe that was moved down in the bill and covered under a different section. I'd have to go with our
but I guess
I don't see them.
My question is, are filing candidates aware of filing deadlines? Are candidates aware of filing deadlines?
Oh, Mr. Chairman, are the candidates aware of the filing deadlines?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Our candidates are aware of the filing deadlines.
So if one was to wait up to the filing deadline, which many of us do file a financial report and say somehow, if someone had unforeseen tragedy or a death in the family, should that report be already be ready to be turned in, or at least within 5 days?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, if you look at some of the reporting periods, like right before session, for example, our reporting deadlines are very quick, and for a treasurer, if they're deployed or they get deployed, if they're in the military, or there's a death in the family and they have to, well, we had one had a death in the family and their mother was in Japan. She had to go to Japan. And again, today there's no way of making that extension to where it'll cover more than a 5-day period. And that's how the law is written today, but this is the only place that I'm aware of, and I'd have to check with the attorney, if there's no appeals process for a fine enacted, especially fines of this level.
Sure. So, Senator, using your example, if a member is a part of our military as well, and I'm sure you're fully aware that they may or may not be deployed, would you say taking on or being involved in a campaign that's part of the thought process of being, committed? Hey, I may have to take a deployment, and if so, what will be the recourse into making sure filing deadlines, or even putting someone in a position overseeing filing deadlines who have the potential not to be there on those deadlines, or if there's...
Mr. Chairman, if I may, a good example is we have one of our members who's treasurers in the National Guard. The National Guard was called up in a state of emergency when we had issues in the Southwest with the floods last year. When that happened, their treasurer was unavailable to do it, but they had like 24 or 48 hours to pack their stuff and depart. I guess the question is, could they have stopped their National Guard training or what they were doing in response to that and filled out campaign finance reports? Possibly, but I think that what we're asking to do here is set up an appeals process that's reasonable and allows the state board to hear appeals and make a reasonable decision from there.
So, Senator Stepp, I am happy to support the bill if the appeal of the penalties process is the other sections that are crossed out for extenuating circumstances. I think the bill needs more work. And again, I like the appeals part, line 43, the appeals and penalties process for someone to be able to appeal their fines. I'm having trouble with the other language of the bill. If perhaps you want to work on that, or we can continue
Mr. Chair,
on.
I'm happy to take this by and work on it, or you want to pass it. I'm happy to, before we get to the floor, work on it with our staff attorney and resolve those issues and concerns.
Well, if you're happy to work on it, I'm happy to pass it by.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I'm happy to take it by and work with our staff attorney to resolve that issue.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion?
Second.
Second. Pass it by temporarily. All in favor? Senator Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, what's the motion, take by temporarily or take by for the week?
For the week.
Okay, because we heard temporary.
Yeah.
So just to clarify that this is a motion to pass by for the week.
Yes, for the week.
Okay, thank you. Then so moved.
Thank you for the clarification, Senator Rowe. Just for the record, all in favor? All opposed? Thank you, Senator Dista.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Senator Mulcahy. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 131 provides that if a person who is a candidate for nomination by a political party at a primary election who appears on the ballot, this is complicated, so I'm going to do it slowly. He appears on the ballot, withdraws his candidacy on or after the 44th day, before but prior to the Tuesday immediately preceding the primary election, and the withdrawal results in one remaining candidate who is now unopposed, the remaining candidate who is now unopposed will be declared the party's nominee for the office sought, and the primary election will be canceled. This bill was drafted in response to a Republican primary in the 50th House District. Delegate Tommy writes, he had a primary opponent who suspended his campaign 11 days before the primary election. This cost Mecklenburg County $50,000. And I'm going to have, if it's okay, the Mecklenburg County Registrar come and tell you a little bit more about that situation and how the cost could have been prevented.
Okay, so I'm sorry, so you have an expert witness here?
I do.
All right, please have him come up.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, SB 131 is solely about solving our locality's problems with time, money, and management. When this primary happened, there was 2 candidates on the ballot. But the 11th day, one of the candidates was removed. He withdrew, submitted the proper paperwork to the Department of Elections. The Department of Elections makes us put up this notice of withdrawal in every voting booth and every absentee ballot that we still had to send out. On there it says that he is no longer a candidate. If there is no longer a candidate, then there should not be a primary because there is only one valid candidate on the ballot. This has happened more than once in my county. It has happened more than once in Northern Virginia. And it cost our localities lots of money. Of the 5 localities that were affected were Charlotte County, Halifax, Lunenburg, Mecklenburg, and Prince Edward. I didn't get data for one county, but it did cost us, this is additional $50,000. This is not the total cost for the election. If they would have stopped the election, we would have saved $50,000. That's all 5 counties combined. Just Mecklenburg County would have saved $12,000, which is ridiculous. This does not include overtime. This does not include the 2 Saturdays that we have to work before the election, packing, unpacking, and repacking the voting machines, and all of our election equipment. So it's not just a money thing, it is a time and effort of all of our officers of election as well, of which just my county has 130.
Thank you, sir. Do you have anyone speak in support of the bill? All right, and we're running up against time, and I know other members have some subcommittees. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'll be very quick. Clarabelle Wheeler, former member of the State Board of Elections, currently member of the Albemarle County Electoral Board. I'm very glad we didn't have this happen in Albemarle County. But you've got a really good registrar who had to deal with it, and he spoke with all of the registrars in his district. If you've only got one name on the ballot, you don't need an election. The fact that this candidate waited until the 11th day before to withdraw is a point of discussion for another time. But the expense, the time, the effort for offices of election, for the electoral board, for the registrar's staff, you can't have but one winner, and it's the only name on the ballot. And I would say this with the greatest respect for Senator Frank Ruff, who saw this and brought it and gave it to his successor. This is a good bill, and it shows good governance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The League of Women Voters considers canceling a primary election where there is only one viable candidate and no other contests in the election to be reasonable. It would save money and prevent voter confusion. With the caveat that there must be only a single race on the ballot, we support SB 131.
Thank you. Is there anyone to speak in opposition to the bill? Do we have anyone online? But any comments? Members of the committee, Senator Sturtevant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one clarification. So this is just for primaries. What if you have a situation where there is a write-in candidate for the primary? Is that going to...
There's no write-in candidates allowed in a primary.
Oh, that was okay. Sharp. He's on it. Okay.
Answers my question, Mr. Chairman. Thank
Any
you.
more comments from members of the committee? Do we have a last word from the patrons?
Madam, Mr. Oh, so
Oh,
sorry.
I
Mr. Chairman, I was dealing with Senator Lucas yesterday. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I would appreciate your support and passage of the bill.
All right. Is there a motion? Second. All right.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Thank you.
Bill reports. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, after today, just for announcement, so the committee is aware, we have 15 bills left in committee. So good work. We'll try to take up majority of them next week so we can go on a crossover, breathing a bit easy. That adjourns today.
The Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia.